Hi everyone, we are at Bristol for the third day of the T20 Tri-Series, and today it's New Zealand who have got two games. First up we've got South Africa against New Zealand, and then it will be England v New Zealand later on. England have all but qualified for the final today, but what is at stake today, Sid, in terms of qualification for the final?
Well, South Africa will be hoping that they can beat New Zealand. If South Africa beat New Zealand and then England beat New Zealand, then South Africa can still qualify for the final. If New Zealand win their match against South Africa, then New Zealand will qualify for the final alongside England. So the first match is really the important one, and that's the one that we'll be looking forward to in terms of the qualification at least.
Okay, but because of England's vastly superior net run rate, we think that even though it's mathematically possible for them not to qualify, they basically already have. Is that right?
Yeah, even if England lose, there'd have to be two very improbable results. There has to be two huge results for them not to qualify on net run rate. So England are all but through.
Okay, and what are our memories of this ground, Sid? Because we were here this time, or almost this time last year, for the World Cup.
Well, my memory of being here, as in right here, is the slightly crazy way that they dealt with the accreditation on the first day of the World Cup, where nobody knew what was going on, nobody knew where you were supposed to go or what you were supposed to do or what passes you needed. It turned out that people needed identification forms they didn't have, and it was all a bit mad. But once we got in, it was all great.
We do like Bristol.
Yeah, we were here for our first day of the World Cup. It wasn't the first day, but we were here for our first day. And when we were here again for the semi-final where England played against South Africa. So I spoke to Laura Wolfart the other day, and some mixed memories of the semi-final for her and for South Africa in general. I think they were really proud to have got there. They really felt that they'd achieved something to get to the semi-final, but obviously when it came to the crunch, they fell up a little bit short, and it was obviously disappointing for them.
Yeah, there are those famous kind of iconic images of them just sort of falling to the ground and in tears, and I guess to have got so close, because it was a very tight semi-final, must have made it a bit worse. On the other hand, from England's perspective, very happy memories.
Yeah, England really enjoyed playing here during the World Cup. They kind of treated it as their base. We know that going into the semi-finals, they were really hoping they would get a semi-final here. That was a big deal to them.
Yeah.
And they had a series of good results here. They had a win against Australia, and then of course that win against South Africa in the semi-final.
And we know what New Zealand think about Bristol, because I asked Susie Bates the other day, and she said they like Bristol better than anywhere else because it has good coffee.
Well,
so they'll be fired up going into today's matches.
Yeah, they'll be caffeinated to the whatever you get caffeinated to.
Okay, so first up, South Africa against New Zealand. So New Zealand are coming off the back of that loss to England in the last game, whereas South Africa are coming off the win against England in the last round of matches. So they're starting at different places psychologically, I guess.
Yeah, South Africa will obviously, it goes without saying, they'll be really keen to win, and they'll be keen to show the world that, they're not here as cannon fodder, which they definitely aren't.
Yeah.
If the ECB had wanted a tri-series with one team as cannon fodder, if they'd wanted to guarantee England a place in the final, there's other people they could have invited. I'm sure that Ireland wouldn't have said no if the ECB had invited them and New Zealand, or indeed them and South Africa. But the ECB and Mark Robinson and the management wanted a challenging series, and South Africa were part of that. So, they're still a good team. If New Zealand bat like they did against England the other day, there's every chance that South Africa are going to take that match, and then that brings South Africa right back into it.
Absolutely, and particularly the way that Sune Loose batted against England was really impressive, wasn't it? Because we were kind of saying that before that last round of games, that we weren't convinced that South Africa had a huge amount of firepower in their batting, and that's what you really need nowadays to be competitive in women's T20. But actually, she came out and just was brilliant, wasn't she?
Yeah, and I think she's done that kind of thing once before against. She has a good innings in an ODI against Australia, if I remember rightly. But generally speaking, an awful lot of the runs she's got have been what you might call cheap runs against the lesser sides, against the Bangladeshis and the Pakistans. But that was a really impressive innings, and for someone that had been kind of, had been a bit down in terms of her form in England so far, it was really impressive to come out and play like that. So that was good from her.
The other positive for South Africa is the batting of Danae van Niekerk, I guess, which has kind of gone a little bit under the radar. We were saying that she did actually hit 2 half centuries in that first day in which the 2 world record scores were hit against South Africa. But because the chase was just kind of miles off, they were miles off getting to both the targets. It kind of, she went a bit unsung there, but actually she's in a really good spot of form. Yeah,
she's been quietly accumulating runs, and again, she can, as long as it's not a big scoring game, I think that South Africa will definitely feel that they can do that. On the other hand, if New Zealand bat first and go and put on nearly 200, then you've got to think that probably South Africa are going to struggle. But you never know. 2020, anything can happen and all that.
Do you think that we saw some of the limitations to New Zealand when they lost that match against England a little bit?
Well, perhaps we did, yes. It's like, if Susie Bates doesn't make runs and Sophie Devine doesn't make runs, then what else have they got? Amy Satterthwaite has had some really big innings in the past. She doesn't look quite so much on the money at the moment, but perhaps with Amy Satterthwaite, perhaps she's due a score, Raf?
Absolutely, yeah. She had a really, really great run of form. What was it, sort of 12
about
months?
A year and a half ago, something like that.
18 months ago, and was just fantastic. And I absolutely think she's due a score and can be really, really dangerous. What England did cleverly against her was actually they took Sophie Ecclestone off, didn't they, and they introduced Heather Knight against her because the feeling was that will be the off-spin option against her is effective. So it'll be interesting to see whether South Africa do the same. But then again, Bates and Devine can win a game on their own at the top of the order, can't they? So, as you say.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's definitely with New Zealand. You feel that if you get them out, you've done more than half the work, I think, where they are at the moment. So yeah, that should be a really interesting game, and obviously both sides will be playing for everything there. And then we've got England coming up later
against New Zealand. Yeah, and that's, as we said, because England have all but qualified for the final already. It's a little bit of a grudge match from England's perspective. So we've talked already about the potential for Mark Robinson to use some of these games as a way to kind of change things up a bit and play some different players. So what kind of team do we think he's going to go with today, Sid?
Well, it's becoming it's becoming very difficult to judge what we think he's going to do. He's certainly surprised us. I think that there's an argument for giving Tash Farrant another game, although she was a little bit expensive. Most of her runs came in an over where she got hit for 3 big boundaries by Susie and Sophie in her first over, which was the second over of the match, I think. She looked better later. She took a couple of wickets. There's an argument for just giving her more game time because it's very difficult to say to her, you've bowled 2.5 overs. She bowled 2.3 overs. You haven't set the world alight in 2.5 overs that you've bowled in England in the last couple of years. So therefore, we're going to drop you. And I think that there would be an argument for keeping her in the team, even if it means that you have to rotate out one of the other fast bowlers, perhaps.
Yeah, well, I think we've said all along that Catherine Brunt's workload has to be monitored very closely, and this seems like the ideal opportunity to give her a bit of a rest. They'll obviously be wanting her to play in the Tri-Series final on Sunday at Chelmsford, and then you'd imagine probably in the ODIs against New Zealand as well, I guess. On a match on which there's not very much riding, I would think that she will probably get a rest, and I guess they might go with Tash Farrant. The other option is obviously Katie George. We should say that we think that the squad is the same as it was for Saturday's games, but we haven't had any announcement to kind of confirm or deny that, really. So we're just assuming that they haven't called anyone else up. We were kind of making a case really that they should have called Sophia Dunkley up, but I think we would have had an announcement to that effect if that's what they were going to do.
Yeah, so we're probably not going to see any kind of surprises. We're not going to see any new caps, I don't think.
No.
Might we see Lauren Winfield? Is there a trouble with Lauren Winfield? Who do you drop, Raf, if you bring in Lauren Winfield?
Yeah.
Try and get her a game. But
the thing is, Tammy Beaumont is in the form of her life. She was player of the tournament for last year's World Cup, but hitting 3 centuries and that wasn't quite a century in the last game, just absolutely brilliant. But then I think Danny Wyatt has got to be Robinson's number 1 person to open in the T20 World Cup, and therefore actually it doesn't send out a very good signal if you drop her in terms of faith in your player. But she's
if you brought Lauren Winfield in for Tammy Beaumont, it would feel like you were resting Tammy Beaumont. If you brought Lauren Winfield in for Danny Wyatt, it might feel like you were dropping Danny Wyatt.
Yeah,
and there's a big difference there. So I don't think that's going to happen. But you wonder, do you really drop Tammy Beaumont, who's really carried England's batting throughout the summer so far? Do you really want to go into a game without her if you can help it?
But then maybe you want some other players to step up and make some runs. I mean, Nat Siver had a good game last time up, didn't she?
She did.
But there's definitely potential for some of the others to step up and make a little bit more of a contribution.
Well, let's see if they can do that today. We'll be here with our coverage, and we'll be back again for the Tri-Series final at Chelmsford on Sunday.